You're the brass ranger for Colts. So you really write at a top level tier drum corps, and you also write for groups that we write for, which is sometimes have some of the issues with instrumentation and things like that. Hey there, welcome to Synced Up Designs podcast, End Zone to End Zone. Today we've got Michael J. Miller here, and we are going to be talking about some indoor winds and everything band. Let's get started. So Mike, talk a little bit about where you come from. We know you're a Florida guy. Actually, you started off in New York, and then you ended up teaching in Florida, right? So talk a little bit about some of your experiences as a band director and kind of making the transition from band director to freelancer and then being a designer with us and things like that. And talk about really just some of the things that you learned as a band director that really you can apply as an arranger now.
Yeah, I think as an arranger these days, one of the things I often reflect on from my time band directing was, when I started teaching, I taught really small schools. My first band had 11 kids in it, and second year grew to have 30 kids, and then taught at the next school, which had probably 50 or 60 winds, but it was very hodgepodge, Swiss cheese instrumentation. So really those first 3 or 4 years of teaching, I figured out how to make a band sound with limited instrumentation or underdeveloped instrumentation or missing instruments, and just finding ways to rescore things and reorchestrate things so that all of the lines were heard and you realized the full score even though you didn't necessarily have all of the instruments sitting in front of you. So that paired with learning the idiosyncrasies of all the different instruments and like things that maybe take a little bit more skill or certain fingerings or things that don't come easy to young students, and really by studying the grade 2 and 3 literature, just figuring out each kind of benchmark of the young wind instrumentalists' progression of learning really helped me be able to score for different levels of musicians. Sure, and I think one of the cool things is, you're the brass ranger for Colts. So you really write at a top level tier drum corps, and you also write for groups that we write for, which is sometimes has some of the issues with instrumentation and things like that. So for me, I'm very much appreciative of the fact that you have a higher tier expectation of what you want to do, but also have a lot of experience in helping develop bands that need that extra edge, but your expertise on both sides really help fulfill that. Sure.
And that's all. You need all that experience. I think it's great.
Well, and I would say that at the end of the day, every band director wants their kids to be successful, and every band director and every band student deserves to have quality literature, quality material sitting in front of them. So, yeah.
What kind of advice would you give to educators that are trying to make that jump? Because we all know the issues that educators have right now in school systems. Either you're not getting a lot of support, or you're not making enough money, or and, right? And a lot of them are making transitions into being a realtor. They're doing other things. And clearly you stayed in the activity by being an arranger, but talk a little bit about that jump and just the nervousness you had of just making that jump.
Yeah. Oh, it's terrifying. Full disclosure, I drove Uber for a couple months, and when I left the classroom just to make ends meet. It's a terrifying leap of faith, but it's doable. It's like anything else. You have to really be intentional and devote yourself to whatever it is you're getting into.
But what was the catalyst that made you make that jump? And there's a tipping point, there's a needle of things that are moving, and at a certain point it gets this might be sustainable, and yeah, you might have to have a side job until it gets there, but at what point did you feel like there was a future in that you could make that jump?
Yeah, well, I don't know that I made the jump necessarily thinking that this is what I was going to do.
You just knew what you didn't want to do.
Well, yeah, but it was also like my wife was going into teaching. She was becoming a college professor, so we had to leave where we were living, where I was a band director, and then I was kind of faced with that decision, like, okay, become a band director in this new location we're moving to, or like I got this thing that's kind of been on the back burner. I could shift all my focus to that and grow it, and that's ultimately what I chose to do. So,
yeah, but so some of it is a little by chance, but a lot of it probably has to do with the fact that you had a lot of time to focus on that.
Yeah.
So it's like if you give it the band directing thing and you're not really sure, and then you dive into something you're equally as passionate about, now you've got that time that you were spending as a band director now to really hone in something that you can do at home.
Yeah, and I think I laid the groundwork for what I'm doing now. Some of it unintentionally while I was a band director, making connections, building rapport with different people, and I was writing and I was learning the skills, so I was sort of subconsciously investing in it before it was time, and that was kind of a realization that I eventually came to. Is like, okay, like I can do this, so.
Yeah. It's but that's one of those things where we all want to be our own boss someday, right?
Yeah.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of friends that are band directors that have taken that route. Some of them are program coordinators now and doing really well with it.
Yep.
And I think it's important that people are just happy with what they're doing. And if you love being a band director and love changing kids' lives to do that, I think it's totally awesome. But if anybody's unhappy, I think there's something in there that speaks to people that take that leap, like do whatever you want to do, but make sure you got, because when you not being a band director, you got time to do whatever else you want to do, right?
Yep.
And throw into that. So I think that's an inspiration to a lot of people
Sure.
that are really wanting to kind of make that jump.
Well, and I think a lot of people look at designers as like something like sort of glamorous in a way, whereas band directing is very, maybe viewed more like a blue collar kind of thing. And I think it's whatever you're into, whether it's writing or teaching or whatever, there's value to it, and you can make a situation better as a teacher or a writer or whatever. So, yeah.
I never thought about that blue collar type of thing, but I get what you're saying, because you're kind of in the weeds, and I think one of the things that I think that we do that benefits band directors is we're allowing them to not worry about the design side of things.
Correct.
They can actually get in there and teach their kids and not worry about the stress of putting together a show or making 5 phone calls to put their show together with different visual accessories, props, uniforms, or arrangers, sound design, So being able to do that, I know on our end, that's what I enjoy giving back to the band directors is their time, really. Yeah. And just having those conversations with people when they realize, like, oh my goodness, I just made 1 phone call and I can talk to the winds arranger, I can talk to the percussion people, I can order my uniforms, I can order my carts, and I find a lot of value and reward in that, because the band directors, they get into band directing to teach, not necessarily to do all this other stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I'm personally thankful we're able to give that kind of back to them. So.
Yeah, and you reminded me of something that I heard at a music ed conference once, and the keynote speaker said, do only the things that only you can do. Mm-hmm. And that's an invaluable lesson for especially young band directors. You don't have to spin all the plates yourself. There are experts in every field, every facet of what makes a band program that you can use and rely on. And
yeah, but a lot of times, though, people will learn how to write drill or music out of necessity because there's no budget to hire anybody else.
Absolutely.
And that is unfortunate, because if the school system doesn't support them, then it's it's hard.
Sure.
It can be frustrating. No, that's great. So talk real quick about some of your drum corps experience. So kind of where you marched, what you started off as, where you ended up as, things that you learned in drum corps that you carry in life lessons every day, or something you might apply writing music. Or
I mean, I'm sitting at this table today because of my experience in drum corps, and I'm from upstate New York, and I marched for 5 years with an all-age corps in the DCA circuit called the Syracuse Brigadiers, where I played mellophone, and that was great, because they were bringing in some of the best from the DCI circuit to work with us, to teach us. Wayne Downey wrote our brass music. Gino Cipriani from then the cadets would come in and teach our brass line, and that's just 2 of like a list of
Sure.
umpteen phenomenal educators. So by the end of those 5 years, I mean, I was hooked because I was around just the best of the best. And then I marched 2 years with the Boston Crusaders. I played trumpet there, and I was drum major second year. And that's my DCI, I guess my drum corps marching experience. Taught a little bit after I aged out, before I kind of went full steam ahead in band directing. I left the drum corps activity for like 8 or 9 years just to be a band director. I wanted my summers.
It's not just a band director, though.
Well, right.
yeah. But it does take a lot of time where you can't do drum corps.
Yeah.
So.
And then, and then round about 2018, I wanted to get back into the drum corps thing, and was asked to go on board with the Colts and teach the trumpets. So I did that for a couple of years, and then was asked to be the brass arranger. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's quite elite.
Yeah.
That's how it happens, though.
Yeah,
you know, I mean,
right place, right time.
Right place, right time. You kind of show your worth in one level, then you kind of get asked to do other things because hey, this guy's responsible. Let's do this.
Yeah.
You know, and for me, like I've written with a lot of winds arrangers. And I've told you this before, is like I thoroughly enjoy the fact that you're fast, you get it on time, and it's good.
Yeah.
You know, and as somebody who has to operate on the front end as far as like program coordinating, and then we have to write the beats and then do the drill on the backside. And typically, you know, every drummer out there knows you're kind of beholden to when the brass arranger gives you the stuff.
Yeah.
And we are very thankful that we get stuff in a timely manner, that we can do the back end stuff so their clients can be successful on that end.
Well, and you want to talk about lessons I learned as a band director. That's why, because when you're at the band director, you're dealing with deadlines, and that was always one thing that I found when we were the most successful, whether it was preparing for a concert band thing or a marching band festival or whatever. Those timelines and those deadlines, they really matter. Because one person misses the deadline, it pushes the next person, and it's a domino effect.
No,
so.
Absolutely. And for me, it's like if you're somebody who's responsible, can do what you say you're going to do on time, and it's good, you're going to keep getting the work.
Correct.
There's so many people out there that I worked with that couldn't do one of those things,
yes.
or two of those things. They were really good, but they couldn't do anything on time, or they need a little bit of work, but they'll get it to you really fast, but they had to redo it, So there's a lot of things that went on with that. And but to know that you don't do that is very welcoming on my side, because it's very stressful when you're having to write drill or beats 2 days before band camp because the brass ranger had 5 months to write something, but they chose to give it to you 2 days before it was due.
Sure.
And nothing makes me more mad than that. So, and I know I'm not the only one, and that's pretty much the sentiment of all percussion arrangers out there.
Yeah.
So let's get into well, first of all, let's talk about some of the lessons you learned. I guess leadership, how to be a good person, how to be a bad person. You can kind of get all that in the above, and drum corps kind of can welcome anything that you want sometimes.
Time management. If I had to pick one thing that drum corps instilled in me, it was time management. I'll never forget coming back from my first season at DCI into my sophomore year of college, and just feeling like a totally different person as far as like my work ethic and my ability to manage time, but also like I remember a 3-hour class my freshman year feeling like an eternity, and then you go and you do 4 or 5 hour vis blocks in the heat in the summer, and then you go back and you do a 3-hour class. It's like 45 minutes. So it changes your perspective, and
perspective is a big one. Like time management perspective. Like when you're with a group of people that does hard things together, and then you go into the real world, like it's all little stuff at that point. Like you can run through a brick wall and it's fine. And to me, I think that's the most valuable thing that drum corps does teach you, because everybody's going to put down their instrument at some point. You're not going to remember your show. You're not going to play it 10 years later, but you are going to remember those lessons. You're probably going to still be chatting with friends that you met. Mm-hmm. All that stuff is really worth its weight in gold. And I understand drum corps dues are going up, and it does suck.
Yeah.
But I still think it could be 3 times as much, and the value over a lifetime is still worth it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it is unfortunate, but I still do believe in it. It's because the thing that you learned, value of time, how much, and sorry, not value of time, but your how to prioritize your time, right? when you learn that, like think about how much time or how much money you spend in drum corps, but really how much money you saved outside of that just by learning time management. Yeah. So it does pay off, and sometimes it's a pay it forward type thing where you get the results in the back end, but it's always worth it. Well,
and you mentioned rigor too. You learn how to manage rigor and deal with higher levels of rigor in drum corps, and that's an amazing skill to learn. I'll never forget. After championships, my second year with Boston, the corps director said, "Now that you've done this, you can do anything," and it's so true. Yeah. Because you're probably, I'll say probably, not going to do something in your life that's harder than a full season of drum corps. Now, there's plenty of other harder things. I get it, but it really puts you through your paces and teaches you what you can do. Those hidden parts inside of you that you didn't know existed.
Yeah, and to me, that's one of the best things about drum corps is that it pulls the best out of people.
Oh, yeah.
What you can do.
100%. Yep.
Good stuff. All right, let's talk a little bit about some indoor wins things.
Awesome.
So, and I'll start off with this controversial subject a little bit. Yeah. There's a lot of groups out there that don't think indoor wins programs move their program forward.
Yeah.
And I can't disagree more with that because I've seen the results of groups that do it versus all they do is concert band, which is great if your kids can play, but they don't have the level of coordination throughout the year to do fall stuff. Then now you have a drum line or a winter guard that's doing it year round, and they go start their marching. They're already 10 steps ahead of the marching band all the time. It never changes. But what we've seen is groups that did do the indoor wins program, and whether they're just getting their foot wet or they're a champion in a class, they are getting so much value out of that, and they're still doing concert band. They're not neglecting that.
Yep.
They're also doing the indoor wins thing, and to me, there's such a huge amount of value in it.
Huge.
Educationally, student growth. I mean, you name it. I understand that there's a lot of battles with just gym space. Like, that's a thing.
Of course.
So, I know that keeps people from wanting to do it because they've got a drum line and a guard, and now they got to add a wins, and they got to fight even more with the basketball folks to get in the gym. So, I understand there's a lot of barriers.
I think that the main argument sort of always has been, the original thing you touched on is that it's going to get in the way of the concert band thing. You're teaching the same skills. You're teaching tone, intonation, blend, balance, all the things that you do in concert band, you're teaching indoor wins. And I'll say this, at the end of the day, you want the horns on the kids' faces, right? So if they're not at the indoor winds rehearsal, are they at home practicing? Probably not, right? So it's time spent on the instrument, and the more time you spend on the instrument, receiving the information in the correct way, the better all of your ensembles are going to get, not just concert band, jazz band, marching band, everything. So, and it's funny that we're having this conversation because, and you probably don't remember this, but years ago in Dayton, you did my percussion ensemble in my high school as a band director. You asked me the question, and you said, "How about an indoor winds thing?" And I was on the other side of the table.
Yeah.
It's funny because here I am in Synced Up Design talking about this stuff this is what I do now. I was in this.
You're adamant about it.
I was in that school. Yeah. Because I was listening to the people, some of the people, that I respected, and there's an argument against it. Sure, you're right.
There absolutely is. Yeah. But, I don't think it's right.
But
people can have an argument, but it doesn't matter.
I've experienced it, and I've seen the benefits from it, and it's awesome.
Yeah, and during COVID, not the cutoff year COVID, like 2021, we saw an uptick in indoor winds groups because they didn't have a fall, and they wanted to give their kids that fall experience with marching. Some stuck, some didn't, but they at least put their toe in the water, I guess, and I thought that was really cool to see, like people just at least trying it, and it is a financial thing sometimes,
absolutely,
and it's a time commitment issue, and it's a space issue, I think the groups out there that have a band room that's big enough to pull a floor out in, those are the groups that are probably going to end up doing it more so than ones that have to fight with 4 other organizations to get into a gym.
Sure.
So, but like I said, I know there's barriers, but if there's a group up there that does not have a barrier and is just kind of contemplating whether or not they want to kind of do it, what are some things that you would suggest that would kind of get them over that hump?
Well, I would just say just try it out. I mean, I think a lot of times people look at an activity and they see like the world-class top groups and they're like, well, we're never going to be that, so they just they give up before they try. But there are lower scale productions that you can do, and just start small and give the kids something to do. If you don't have gym space, you could put a small production together in your band room or in the parking lot or
right, yeah.
If the weather's nice.
Well, there's a will, there's a way, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you can absolutely figure that out.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the challenges or the unique challenges between indoor winds compared to fall marching band, and some of the techniques that you would sell your soul to in marching band that may not work in indoor, and vice versa.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first most obvious thing is that you're inside, so sound is going to stick around longer. So you have to choose your 2D moments carefully, and I think indoor winds has kind of become a thing where we do vignettes in marching band, right? We do section features, but in the indoor winds idiom, it's almost more about how do we feature every color independently and have just more pared down moments of orchestration. And then of course you have the soundtrack, and that's the other big thing. And what I've really learned the last couple of years is sometimes less is more in the soundtrack, just because again you're inside, so it can get really thick. And if you're not, especially a lot of the circuit shows, right, are in like smaller gyms in a high school or a middle school, and those are much boomier than your circuit championships, which are generally in a drier environment. So putting some space in the soundtrack, just so that the acoustics can appreciate all the sounds and it doesn't get muddy or heavy, opening up rhythms and things. And then there's sometimes we have groups that have acoustic percussion instruments, and that's a whole different thing because just again we're inside, so it can't be 2D all the time. It's not marching band indoors. Marching band, you're outside, so there's more room for sound to travel, and you can do some more 2D things. But just being really a little bit more mindful of the orchestration, I think, is the biggest thing when writing for indoor.
What do you think of using electronic effects on wind instruments?
I think it's awesome. I think it's you have to have the know-how. It's not just we're just going to throw some random effect. Like you have to know what you're doing, and that's a specialized skill. That we were talking about YouTube recently. Like you can learn how to do it. Ideally, you've got somebody versed in electronics or sound engineering that can help you out. But I think it's great. A simple one is delay. Right, you just throw a meter delay on something, and it's in time.
Is there on the battery side of things, people use a vocoder often, right, with a snare drum.
Yeah.
It's easy. The non-pitch, terrible instrument that can be changed with a pitch.
Sure.
Is there a version of that for the wind side of things?
Yeah, the EWI, the electronic wind instrument, because it's a MIDI instrument, so you can make the fingerings whatever instrument. It could be 3-button trumpet, it could be a sax or clarinet, but also too like. The kid playing the EWI could be a saxophone player, but you could make that sound like a trumpet or a violin or whatever. So really, any kid could be playing any instrument with the EWI.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it comes with a plethora of effects on it too. So.
How much are those things?
I have no idea. Probably a couple hundred, I would say.
Sure. As we wrap up, is there anything that you want to comment on, some cool future projects you got working, or anything you're doing now you want to talk about?
I'm excited for the Colts. We've got a really cool show coming together, and it's funny we're talking about this using old music in a new way, and I no spoilers, but that's very much a part of our current process. Awesome. So yeah.
That's good.
I want to talk more about that, but I can't right now.
You can't right now. Well, that gives us another reation to have another one later.
There you go.
So it'll be maybe we do it in like June or July when you're in town or something off the road. We can kind of sit down and talk about it again.
Yeah. I guess I am also excited about Horizon Winds. They're an independent world group. First year with them. Their show is about flamingos. So they're out there in
Very
like
cool.
pink feathers, and there's one like the baby bird who's like his feathers hasn't grown in yet, so he's like in a gray costume versus all the pink, and it's kind of a newer, quirky kind of thing. So yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Well, it was definitely good having you here.
Yeah,
and,
thanks for having me.
I know we'll do many projects together in the future, and yeah, man, super glad you're able to come here and hang out with our End Zone to End Zone podcast. So
Sweet.
Anyways, thanks for joining us, guys, and we'll get some more information to you guys on the next one.